Good day, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Nordic Football Podcast. My name is Jonathan Vaduva, and we are back for another week. As always, I'm joined by Steve Wiss. How are you, my friend?
Jonathan, how are you doing? I'm really good, thanks, pal. Been doing well. Busy time with this midweek round coming up, and we don't get too many midweek rounds, do we? In Scandinavia, certainly. Sometimes in the summer we get some, but this is an exciting one, especially as there's a couple of really crunch games in both the Eliteserien and Allsvenskan. But I'm doing well. I hope you're in very good health, my friend.
Doing well, thank you. Yeah, good to be on a show with you again. We're in a good rhythm at the moment, aren't we? And had a good interview with our man Anders Torstensen last week. We had a bonus episode last week if you've not heard it. So we brought you 2 episodes for the price of 1. And it was with the Mjällby manager. Of course, we'll talk about Sweden in part 2 of this week's show. So we will talk about Mjällby and their attempt to break the record. But what did you think of that interview? Did you enjoy it, Steve? Anders Torstensen?
I did, actually. It was an interview that rather shocked me in a way, how efficient he is. The way he came across, I almost, I feel like he could get me to do things that I don't think even I knew I could do. I feel like you know what I mean. I feel like he's the sort of guy who could really inspire you to do well for him, and I can see why he'd done so well. We kind of cursed him, didn't we? The curse of the NFP interview. They go and lose 3-1.
No spoilers.
But we kind of cursed him. But what a fantastic achievement he's done. I enjoyed it. Great guy, I think he tells it how it is as well. Like any question you asked him, he didn't bullshit, did he? It's like he will answer it properly, truthfully. I like that sort of person. Doesn't play any stupid games. It's down to earth and tells it how it is.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable. It was quite random, actually. We I think I had the idea on the Monday after our show. You asked me on the show, didn't you? I think your exact words was, "What on earth is going on with Mjällby?" And I thought, you know what? Let's see if we can find some answers. And I sort of reached out to 1 or 2 people, and next thing you knew, I mean, if we talked about how we coordinated that interview, it was kind of like I had to get you to coordinate a few things, didn't I? It was so unexpected, swiftly done, very kind of precision timing from Anders. Really, really appreciated his time, and of course, as a former military man, I guess that could be expected. If you haven't listened to it yet, strongly recommend it. It's probably one of my favorite episodes we had so far this season, probably in terms of guests. I mean, every guest been amazing, but it was very insightful, and considering their amazing run, it was really worth it. I mean, before we move on, we are going to start with Norway, by the way, but so we will talk about Mjällby later. But before we move on, I just wanted to give, I can't let this bit go without saying a massive thank you to Conrad Gronlund, who helped set up the interview. Really appreciated it because, like I say, it was set up really swiftly, and I hope the listeners enjoyed it. But yeah, thank you to Conrad. So really appreciate that. If you haven't, you can follow him at Carl Conradaxel on Twitter. But yeah, let's get into this week's show in terms of the league. We're going to review them. We're going to review the results quite briefly. Not going to be as in detail this time, and then we're going to look at the midweek round, and hopefully that'll give you enough to get your teeth into ahead of this sort of next coming few days with some really, really big, potentially season-defining games coming up. So yeah, before I do that, obviously, if you haven't listened to it yet, go on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcast. It's the most recent episode called Mjällby's Military Mastermind. So you can listen to that. And of course, the last episode was Roma wasn't built in a day. Now, Steve, as we start the Norway section, Roma wasn't built in a day, but according to the Wikipedia entry that came up after Thursday night's game, it was destroyed in 90 minutes by Bodø Glimt. An incredible result. I mean, tell us about this, Steve. I mean, I'm still not sure if I'm quite over it, to be honest. AS Roma absolutely battered, and the funny thing about this, I remember before last week's show, you were like, well, we could talk about it, but it'd probably be simple, straightforward for Roma. Kind of, you downplayed it. Let's be honest. You weren't quite sure about the occasion in terms of the magnitude, but 6-1 to Bodø Glimt against AS Roma. Tell us about it.
Do you know what? I think the older I've got, the less sort of belief I have in sort of not fairy tales, but unusual events occurring. I feel like I go very much to the logical side of my brain, Jonathan, these days a lot more. And the logical side was that Roma would obviously outclass them, but I don't think the starting 11 that Jose Mourinho fielded was good enough. It didn't probably give enough respect to Bodø Glimt either, and they took advantage of it. 6-1 was sensational. They came out like a train. They got into that 2-0 lead with Botheim's early goal, Berg with a fantastic strike to make it 2-0, and deserved as well. They were all over them at that time. And Roma couldn't handle the physicality. They couldn't handle the pace of the game. But then they got one back to 2-1. And then I'm thinking, you know what? It's going to be a real dig for the rest of the game. They're going to be sort of holding on to this advantage. And I think that's where Mourinho went wrong as well. He presumed in his head, it's going to be all us. It's going to be backs to the wall for Bodø Glimt. They're not going to be looking to extend the lead or anything. And I think that's where kind of Mourinho got fooled a bit. And, Bodø Glimt are always looking to score goals. And, the other thing about Bodø Glimt, we know, they like to rack up the score as well when they're ahead. They don't just like to hold on. And they got so much into their groove that, it went to 3-1 and 4-1, 5, and then 6. They were creating chances at will. Solbakken and got a couple of goals. Pellegrino finished one late. And, I think they were hungry for a 7th and an 8th as well. It was stunning stuff. Roma would just hit like a train. Mourinho admitted they were completely outplayed afterwards. And, it was so sensational. We had to do like an impromptu Twitter space thing, didn't we? We had Tom Dent on for an immediate aftermath of the game. It was such a stunning result. We kind of forced to do something unusual like that. But it was a memorable night for Norwegian football, and especially the Bodø Glimt fans.
Yeah, and this wasn't just a kind of unexpected victory, to be honest. I mean, I have to say, I think I said it on Twitter, it's arguably the best performance I've seen from a Scandinavian team, maybe in my life, since I've been following this region, maybe ever, in terms of result. Glimt have never been to this sort of height before, I don't think, as a club. The reaction from the fans was unbelievable. The way they reacted, they were absolutely loving it. First time in Jose Mourinho's career that he's conceded 6 goals in a game, in 1,008 games in his career. So, I mean, we're talking record breaking here. He came out after the game in his customary style and sort of slammed all the players. And I think he relegated half the players who started. Didn't even play them in the next game in Serie A. Dropped them from the score completely. But, I mean, this was, what the thing that shocked me, Steve, I mean, we won't dwell on it too long, but the quality of the football was, to me, just extraordinary. I know you said that Glimt made changes, and before the game you kind of mentioned that they're maybe not as scintillating as they have been last season, but the level of goals. I mean, the first goal, for example, the football was the 1-2 touch passing, and then when it was sort of the last 3 goals in the last 20 minutes, I mean, Solbakken got 2. I was almost laughing at the end by the sort of there was 2 goals in 2 minutes at one point, Pellegrino and Solbakken, and I was literally just sitting there laughing, to be honest. I mean, what was your feelings about this? How big was this?
Yeah, it was as the match escalated. I'm like, wow, we're witnessing a big thing here. Everyone's going to be talking about it. I got questioned the next few days from people like, what happened there, Bodø Glimt? Because I'm sort of into Norwegian football and stuff. People who are not normally interested in a team like them are like, wow, Jose Mourinho's been dicked 6-1 by a team in Norway. So you soon realise it's a big occasion. Looking back, it might be one of the nights that maybe the manager looks back on, or guys like Patrick Berg and Bjørkan and even Botheim, and think, maybe that was the night that got me in that shop window to get a potential really big move, or the start. You sort of grew the seed in the mind of people. He looks a good player. He looks a great manager. So, what I think? Teams have got wise to playing Bodø Glimt in the Eliteserien a bit more than they were. We'll talk about this in a minute. The match against Molde coming up, but they kind of know what Bodø Glimt are about now. But Roma, I don't think they've done their homework properly, or they maybe you kind of have to face it before you realise what you can do against it. And I'm not saying they were naive or anything, but that was Bodø Glimt of last season. And maybe it was because they were against an opponent that were a little bit they were not wary about how to approach them, maybe underestimated them a bit. And I feel there was quite a few factors at work, really. But it was great to see that sort of glimpse of last season. And they follow it up with just a 1-1 draw away, Godset at the weekend, which I kind of thought might happen. But for one night, it was fantastic. And I wonder what the reaction of Roma will be in the next match. I really don't know.
Yeah, I mean, watching the goals back, Mourinho was absolutely shell-shocked on the touchline. He looked very cold as well there in the Arctic Circle. It puts them top of the group in the Conference League, which, gives Glimt now a chance. I mean, that was good enough as it is. You mentioned putting people in the shop window. I mean, for me, Patrick Berg, he's guaranteed to get a move, isn't he? I mean, he's destined for a big club. I thought he was outstanding. But so many players played well, really. But Botheim was incredible as well. I was really, really impressed with what I saw, to be honest. I don't think it was no fluke. And congratulations to everybody at Bodø Glimt, to be honest. Do you think they can, just before we move on to sort of the upcoming games, do you think they can maybe even get a result in the Stadio Olimpico? Do you think they can maybe look to qualify from this group now, or was it a one-off?
Well, at the minute they can look to maybe even winning the group, Jonathan, can't they? If they actually beat, if they were to get a draw again at the Olimpico or beat Roma, then they're looking at winning the group, which I think gets you a bye in the next round in the knockouts. Look, Mourinho is a hardened manager. He will want a bit of revenge, I think. But after that performance, the problem for Bodø Glimt is they've got some. The squad is quite small. They've got the few injuries racking up now. The last match I think is in the Ukraine away. They've got a home match again. I think it's against Siska Sofia. That's the one they think if they win that they should qualify. But the world's their oyster now almost after beating Roma 6-1. That's a massive result. Not just in terms of beating Roma, but in terms of qualifying from the group, which I think we all thought they'd have a good chance of it. But it looks really likely now that they are going to make the knockout round after Christmas, which is that would be great news, from certainly a Nordic football podcast point of view.
Yeah, really fantastic stuff. I still can't really believe it. There was a few interesting sort of quotes after it. One reporter asked the Bodø Glimt coach Kjetil Knutsen, if Jose Mourinho is a special one, then what are you? And he said, the normal one has already been taken, so I'll have to be the pretty one. That was quite a funny answer, I thought. A few other sort of funny bits and pieces out of it. Mourinho was obviously fuming, but Knutsen was full of praise for him. Kind of obviously, it's quite a differential character, he seems, isn't he, Knutsen, from talking to people. He talked about the synthetic pitch, kind of said that good players and good teams can play on all surfaces. And just generally was quite praiseworthy of Roma as a club. Kind of played it down, was quite humble. So I mean, the one other thing just want to finalize it with is really, I found this quite a good comment that was posted on Glimt's Twitter account. It was from someone called Janita Leisjo, I think, pronouncing that correctly, and she put, imagine being almost 6 years old and yesterday's match is your first ever game at Aspmyra. You see the hero Patrick Berg score, Glimt beat Roma and Mourinho 6-1. That's what my son experienced. I don't think there was much sleep on him last night, and just thought that was a lovely touch in terms of the fans, the experience for the fans. What an incredible result. And as I say, the football. I've watched Barcelona this season. I've watched Manchester United in the same week, and neither of them was anywhere near the level of Glimt, in my opinion, in terms of the style of football. So, massive congratulations to Bodø Glimt. But as you just mentioned, didn't go all their way this weekend, did it, Steve?
No, it didn't. And the results from the previous round, Molde already put the pressure on them by beating Stabæk 3-0 away from home. But they could only go to Godset and draw 1-1. Took an early lead through Ola Solbakken. Had chances for 2, and they probably should have taken them. Had a bad injury, an injury to Patrick Berg, which means he's probably going to, we don't know how long he's out for. It could be weeks. There's a chance he could even play against Molde midweek. We don't know yet, but obviously not good news. And then Krasniki who has the number 92 shirt for Strømsgodset, which is a weird number in it. I mean, there's got to be something there. 92. Why would he have the number 92 shirt? Equaliser with a deflected shot in the 75th minute. They tried to win the game, but I don't think they pushed the boat out completely. It was like, we'll take a point here in the end, and we'll have a 1 point lead going into this round number 24 against Molde.
Yeah, worrying if Patrick Berg's injured. That's a big potential blow. In the other game, Molde got a fairly comfortable win, didn't they, away at Stabæk 3-0. Omir Wanfo got 2 goals in that one, but he did miss a penalty, didn't he? And also, these two playing each other in midweek now. Let's look ahead to this midweek round. What I'm going to do, I think the best way of doing this before we do focus on that game, because that's going to be our main focus really of this podcast. Let me just read out the scores from this weekend. So we have Viking 5, Lillestrøm 1, Stabæk 0, Molde 3. We have Christiansen, my boys, losing 3-1 at home to Sarpsborg. Bit of a shock result there. Rosenborg 4, Sandefjord 1. Strømsgodset 1, Glimt 1, which you just talked about. Tromsø 1, Mjøndalen. We talked about them on the last show, Mjøndalen, in some detail. If you've not listened to that, maybe go back on the Roma episode. Losing 1-0 to Tromsø. Vålerenga 2, Haugesund 1. Haugesund getting a defeat after that 7-goal thrashing the previous week. And in the final game, Odd 3, Brann 3, which I think you predicted goals in that game. So well done to you on that one. Was there, before we get into the Molde game, was there any games that caught your eye on that?
Probably, obviously, the 3-3 draw, Odd against Brann, that could have ended 5-5. There were chances at both ends. Neither. Brann have this knack of just playing quite well recently, but just they're not getting the wins. They're drawing matches, but they're not winning them. And it's because they're conceding too many goals. They've had 2 clean sheets all season, which is not enough. And, Christiansen losing at home to Holger, that was a shock. Like, Christiansen had won 9 out of 11 home games heading into that game, and Sarpsborg had lost their last 7. I talked to him in the last episode about how I was worried about them naming, Lars Bohina's going to leave the club at the end of the season. I'm like, I'm not sure how that's going to work. But it seems the players love that idea. Or, maybe they're kind of playing for him. Now that they know that, he's... Players, I suppose, like to know what's going on. Uwe Ros has been linked with the Sarpsborg job, by the way, for next season. But they played well, Sarpsborg. They deserved the win. I've got to be honest. And it was a shock result because Christiansen great at home. There's something like Christiansen, they don't like being a favourite. They like being that underdog. They would rather sort of play Rosenborg at home than a match to be odds-on favourite.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. And that, Christiansen, that result, they actually lost 8 games this season, but that drops them down to 5th. And the main benefactor of that is Rosenborg, who are now into the top 3 in the podium. Level on points with Viking as well, who Viking are kind of doing really well, aren't they? They're flying at the moment in terms of upward trajectory, potentially now, finishing in top 4. So, yeah, good results for them. Down at the bottom, of course, Stabæk and Mjøndalen are still bottom 2. And then you've got Brann in the relegation playoff at the moment on 20 points and 5 points behind Tromsø with 7 games to go. Now, let's turn our attention, Steve, to Molde, because this is a big game, really, isn't it? This is potential title decider. There's 1 point between the two sides at this moment in time. Looks like one of the two of them will win the title. Rosenborg are quite a way bit back, still 7 points off the top, Rosenborg. So let's turn our focus to this game. And we talked a little bit about Glimt. It's Molde who are the hosts. So tell us about them and tell us your assessment of this preview.
Yeah. Well, Fortress Acre Stadium, they have an amazing record here, Jonathan. They've won 34 of their last 41 league matches at home, which is absolutely sensational. Won 9 out of 11 at home this year. Vålerenga were the only side to beat them. They do not drop many points at this stadium. They have got some injury problems themselves, though, into this game. Martin Ellingsen is ruled out for the rest of the season with a knee injury. He missed the first half of the year. He came back recently, he started the last 6 games. No coincidence that they're unbeaten in them last 6. Ellingsen's a really big linchpin. So to lose him for the rest of the season, I think is a blow. But Eirik Ulland Andersen is out as well. He's had a great year, actually, Andersen. So it's a shame that he's out. Bert Rees is suspended. Don't think he'd have started anyway. But the left back there, Christopher Horgan, probably would start there anyway. But still, you'd like Rees around on the bench. They've got a doubt at right back with Martin Linnes. So they've got some injury problems themselves. I mentioned Patrick Berg for Bodø Glimt is doubtful, but apart from Ulrik Saltnes is out for the rest of the season, they shouldn't have any concerns. Look, in the previous match this season, Molde beat Bodø Glimt. It's the only defeat Bodø Glimt have had at home, and Erling Moe moved to a defensive system, a counter-attacking system, and it's the first time he's really ever done that in the league against anyone. I mentioned this before. The only time I've ever seen him do it is in Europe against some bigger reputation teams, better sides. But he did it in Glimt, and he got the result 2-0. And I'm just wondering, my question almost to myself is, will he try the same tactic again at home against Bodø Glimt? He's won his last 2 matches at home against Bodø Glimt, and he's done it by outscoring them 4-2, I think, was the match last year, and the previous season was quite high scoring as well. So a lot depends how Moo sets up his team, because we know how Bodø Glimt are going to play, but the Molde approach is less certain, and that will determine whether the game's really wide open and full of goals or quite cagey and tight.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. And talk to us about like the key tactical battles here. Where will this game be won and lost, in your opinion? Is it, because from watching Glimt, I mean, they're a front foot team. They're not going to sit back, are they? So is it sort of Molde, might they look to hit them on the counter attack? Will they look to stamp their mark on this game? How do you see the flow of the game potentially going?
If Erling Moe plays his cards right, there's a chance he can out-tactic Kjetil Knutsen, because I praised Knutsen in the last podcast episode, didn't I? How we've seen this team evolve from, finding ways to beat teams, with more possession, as a favourite. He's adapted his attacking approach quite a lot in the last 2 or 3 years. I've never seen Kjetil Knutsen like park the bus or go into their shell and have this sort of more defensive approach. Very often, apart from maybe the season they came up and get promoted, that was a while ago now. I just worry that they're going to be too open here for Molde. Molde they've got the offensive, the one side in Norway who can hit Bodø Glimt hard offensively. They've got Ui, they've got Magnus Wolff Eikrem, Brynhildsen, Knudsen. They've got guys who can hurt Bodø Glimt. I don't think there's any other sides really in the league who can hurt them that much, but Molde definitely can. And I just worry Bodø Glimt are going to be a bit too open. They can get caught out. They usually concede goals against Molde. But Molde, on the other hand, if they shut the game down, they've got the defenders like Martin Bjørn back. It helped them in the previous fixture. They had Stian Gregersen, but he's moved to Bordeaux, of course. But they've got, if Linnes plays, that's a strong right back. Christopher Horgan can really dig in as well, left back if he needs to. Sheriff Sinian's a big unit. Molde, if they adapt their game plan, they're capable of probably shutting out Bodø Glimt or restricting them. I'm not sure whether Bodø Glimt have got the defence in them to restrict Molde. That's my concern. I think it's got to be a shootout for Bodø Glimt to win the game. They're not going to come in and be able to nick a 1-0. It's not their style. So Molde, it's all the cards is on Molde how they want to approach the game. They can win the game in 2 different ways, though. They can win 4-3 or they can nick a 1-0. I think Bodø Glimt can only win a shootout in like 3-2 or something.
Yeah, and this game, there's certainly, this is definitely going to be a game. I mean, it's a major event, isn't it? This is a major event in Norwegian football. I mean, I'm looking at Molde's Twitter account, and they are seriously bigging this game up. They're really promoting it. They've had the captain, Magnus Wolff. They've had the key players putting out Twitter videos saying, get your tickets. The managers put out a Twitter video saying, get your tickets. Like, they're seriously drumming this game up. They're saying this is the big spectacle. You need to be there. They've announced they're going to put a tent up before the match, just next to the stadium. They'll be selling drinks, pizza, live music from Frank and Toller. So anyone over 18, if you are going to the game, you can get yourself there as well. If you've got a match ticket or a season ticket, you can go and sort of get yourself some pizza and some beer before the game. So they're really ramping up the coverage for this match. They've called it the biggest game, best 2 teams in Norway. You must be there, they've said. What is your prediction for this game, Steve? And not just your match prediction, but how do you think the flow of the game will go? Who will be the key players that will decide this match? Because we haven't really talked about Owe yet, but I know you had a few words on him and how he did in the last round. But just from that point of view, with Patrick Berg maybe missing as well, who are the players that are going to decide this on each team?
My prediction is going to be Molde 2, Bodø Glimt 1, but I think it's going to be a cagey affair. I think Erling Moe is going to operate defensively again. He's going to say, you know what, we'll sit back sometimes here. We'll let you have the ball, but you're not going to be able to break us down, and we're going to get you on the counter-attack. The key players for me are Uwe and Magnus Wolff-Eikrem. If they have good games for Molde, they're probably going to be in business. And I would also say Christopher Haugen, the left-back for Molde. If he has a really good game both defensively and offensively, that could be the key. In terms of Bodø Glimt, they are really short-handed in midfield because Ulrik Saltnes is out for the rest of the season, the captain. This is just the sort of match he would do well in. Patrick Berg is highly likely to be injured for this game. And even if he plays, I don't think he'll be at full capacity. So that's where Molde can get him in midfield. We're going to have guys like Elias Hagen playing. He's not bad. He's had some good games at times, actually, but this is a big fixture for him to come in at. Bodø Glimt are really going to need that back four to play well. Mo, Loda, and Bjørkan Samsted, they need a good game. But yeah, I would say in attack, obviously, I think the most important attacker for Bodø Glimt is Solbakken, and I think he's the one who can make things happen in terms of, creativity. Botheim has got to be clinical, but, Botheim's not like a Juncker or someone that creates chances for other people. I think he's got to be in the right areas, but I think Solbakken, Pellegrino as well, I suppose he's got a bit of flair and class, but it might not be his sort of game here at Molde. I think if Uwe and Magnus Wolff-Eikrem show their true class, then that'll probably be the difference for the home team.
Well, fantastic stuff. I think that kind of pretty much wraps it up for Norway. You've got your prediction in there. I'm not sure if there's any other business that you want to talk about before we sort of go and move to part two.
Well, I suppose I've got to mention a couple of other games there's a really interesting one actually on Thursday, Brann against Viking, where that affects both ends of the table. By the way, if this top of the table clash does end a draw, I don't think we can rule out Rosenborg and Viking completely, because I think there were a lot of people saying this is a definitive title deciding match. There's still going to be 6 games left after this, Jonathan. So it's not quite like, with 3 or 4 games left. There's still time. If Rosenborg and Viking can go, I mean, Rosenborg have still got to play Molde and Bodø Glimt, for example. So if you say Rosenborg won their last 7 games, they're going to get 62 points. Would that be enough to win the league? Probably not. But if this match tomorrow does end a draw, it does keep them slightly interested. And Viking are like a train right now. Like, they are really scoring goals. There's no pressure on their shoulders. But Brann Viking's big, obviously, both ends of the table. A local sort of Western derby of Norway. That's a really intriguing game. It's on Thursday at 5 p.m. kickoff UK time. I think there'll be goals in that. I think, there's pressure on Brann. That's definitely the other match for me that stands out in this match day. That's well worth watching. Great
stuff. And I think that probably, does that wrap it up?
Yeah, that'll wrap it up for part number 1. Obviously, a big game there. Part number 2, we're going to be talking of Sweden. We've got a big game there between Malmö and AIK. So, do join us after the break and for more action from the Nordic Football Podcast.
And just before we go to the break, Steve, for anyone who wants to watch that game, what time is it? What's the details on that? Molde Glimt.
Molde against Bodø Glimt is at 7 p.m. UK time. You'll be able to watch it. FootMob have got it now. Sorry, not FootMob. One Football have got it on the mobile app. If you want to watch that, download the One Football app. I think it's pretty much most countries in the world, apart from Scandinavia, you can watch that game. So yeah, it's a tasty affair. Well worth keeping your eye on that match at 7 p.m. UK time, or wherever you are around the world.
Yeah, keep an eye out for that, because it's an exciting announcement from One Football. They're showing Eliteserien. I'm not sure. I tried to watch one of the Danish games at the weekend, but apparently they don't have the rights yet. So do double check that. But yeah, that's an exciting development, which maybe we'll talk about in weeks to come as well in a bit more detail. But yes, great stuff. So coming up in part 2, we'll move to Sweden. There's another huge game to preview in this one, and we'll recap some of the scores as well, and any other business as well. So see you in part 2 after this short break.
Welcome back to the Nordic Football Podcast. This is part 2 of episode number 26 this season, Jonathan. We've, I tell you what, I think we're on for a record this year of episodes that we've produced. So kudos to you there as well, and myself, I suppose, and all our guests as well that we've had on the show. So Allsvenskan then, that's also the midweek round coming up. It's getting really tight in the table of Allsvenskan. There's 2 teams on 47 points. That's Djurgården and AIK. Malmö and Elfsborg are on 45 points each. Hammarby on 40. Probably just out of range for them now, really, even if they did win out. But, this title battle gets really close. We're going to be previewing one match in particular, which is Malmö, AIK to come. But from the previous match day, Jonathan, what stands out for you?
Yeah, it's really heating up now, this title race. To be honest, there's been a lot of dramatic games. Djurgården beating Kalmar in that game, that was quite a dramatic finish. They looked comfortable at one point, Djurgården, and then nearly threw it away. There's all kinds of things going on in this league at the moment. You've got Djurgården top, but they're not looking that convincing, I'll be honest. Obviously, they're level on points with AIK, both on 47 points. Djurgården top on goal difference. You've got Malmö 2 points below them, third place. Then Elfsborg level on points with Malmö, but worse goal difference, 45 points. So you've got 4 teams now with 6 games to go within 2 points of each other. So this is a 4-way title race now. There's no doubt about it. Elfsborg got a really good result at the weekend, and I think we have to include them in the title race now. Hammarby 7 points off the top, probably not involved, but they're starting to pick up a little bit of form, which is interesting. But yeah, I think we can certainly conclude this is a 4-way title race, Steve.
Yes, it certainly is. And, I'm just going to recap a few results here that we had over the weekend. As we go through the whole round, Örebro 1, Degerfors 2, AIK 1, Norrköping 0, Elfsborg 3, Sirius 0, Hammarby 4, Östersunds 3, absolute thriller there. Mjällby 1, IFK Göteborg 3, Varberg 1, Malmö 1. A bit of a surprise result there. Djurgården beat Kalmar 3-2. They were 3-0 up in that game and were given an absolute fright. And Häcken, it's been that sort of year for them, hasn't it? Häcken 2, Halmstad 3. They blew another lead. It's been that sort of year for them. We talk about Elfsborg as this sort of outsider in the race. I watched this game actually against Sirius, and I must say, first half, they just looked on it. They look like the side. They don't look like they're under pressure. They don't look like there's expectation on their shoulder. They're enjoying their football. Like, no one expects them to win the league. I guess at some point maybe the noose and the pressure might go around their neck a bit. But right now it's just like I mentioned, they've got the favourable fixtures to come, or reasonably decent fixtures. Are they a serious runner in this?
Elfsborg?
Yeah.
100%. They're definitely in it. I kind of was a bit hesitant, in the previous weeks, just not quite sure. They had a really bad run of games. When I thought they were going to be in it, that they really picked up a bad run of form, and they went kind of what was it? I think they lost 3 in a row. The massive, famously lost to Östersunds, away to Östersunds in September. Then they lost the game against Malmö. I saw that at home, and it could have gone either way that game, and they lost it. And I just thought, this is it for them. Then they got absolutely destroyed by Mjällby, which was an incredible game, really, 4-0. And you just thought, it's all over for them. I mean, imagine if they got to even. Imagine if they just got 3 points in that. They'd be top of the league.
Top of the league.
From those 3 games. I mean, could have got 3 draws, or even just beating Östersunds, they'd be top. So you can it just sums up this title race in the sense that no one's grabbing the bull by the horns, really. But just when you thought they're out of it, they've beaten EFK. They've gone to Djurgården and won 3-0. Incredible result there, where they look very strong. Simon Olsen and Rasmus Alm getting 2 goals. And then they followed it up with a comfortable 3-0 win against Sirius. I mean, it was all wrapped up by half time. Gudjonsson got 2 goals, and Johan Larsson scored. So 3 back-to-back clean sheets. 7 goals scored in 3 games, none conceded. They're definitely in the race now. You look at the games to come, and it's not the hardest of run-ins. There's harder run-ins, I think, but they've still got a couple of tough games. They've got to go to the Norrköping. The next game's Degerfors in this midweek round. And then Varberg, Halmstad, they'll fancy themselves against them. Örebro on the last day, probably be down by that point. The big one, though, will be 29th of November against AIK, potentially. Could even be a title decided by that point. So I think the one thing I've learned about this Elfsborg team in this past 2 years, you can't write them off. They are defying the logic. There was a little bit of, obviously, a disappointment for them, a red card for Maudie Jarjaway. So, he'll be out for a couple of games. But all in all, they are looking quite strong in Elfsborg.
Yeah, Malmö drop points. They seem to drop points when we least expect them to. Against Varberg, of all teams away. Varberg haven't won a game for quite a long time. But I looked at the stats of that game, and it seemed that it was quite an even one again. Have Malmö been affected sort of by Champions League hangover there? That's what come to my mind in that game. Djurgården were given a scare against Kalmar 3-0 up, and it went back to 3-2, but they did win. That's a big disappointment for Malmö. Just when you think Malmö are going to take the bull by the horns and dominate this league, they drop random points, don't they? It kind of just sums up this title battle that really nothing can be ruled out.
Yes, and there's an interesting backstory in Malmö. I mean, I caught a fair bit of this Malmö Varberg game. You're definitely right. I think there is a sense that they're feeling a bit of I think they're feeling the pinch a bit from Champions League. I think they are having a bit of a hangover. Varberg went with 5 at the back, really kind of not part of the bus, but they were very kind of, defense first, and looked to counter-attack with the pace of Tashreeq Matthews, who's looked quite good, by the way. Still lacks a bit of an end product. Former Bayern Munich man. He's only 21, but he looked very, very good on the break. Obviously, very quick player, decent dribbler. And obviously Simovic, who scored a quality goal, by the way, kind of almost out of nothing. I mean, it was an incredible half volley. But yeah, there's 2 issues with Malmö, which I'll talk about. That are worried. They do worry. I mean, I've tipped them for the title. If you listen to our interview with the Malmö manager, he's tipped them for the title. I asked him who he thinks will win the league, and he said Malmö. But there are two elements that worry me slightly. Number one is that fatigue, that running. In terms of, they've got to go to Chelsea now. They've got Chelsea again in their next Champions League game. They got absolutely torn apart in that game, which I'll talk to you in a minute about, Steve. And then, just that run of Champions League games. Maybe they'll even, if they do go out, maybe they'll start resting players in those games, because that is, I think, disrupting them a little bit. And Kolak and Bermasevic, I know Bermasevic scored, but they're not looking quite as sharp as they did in the last, since I wrote that Y-Scout blog on them, they're not quite looking as sharp, I'll have to say. And the other thing that worries me is just defensively. I think they are prone to a bit of pace on the counter, I have to say. I think they look a little bit like, I think there is a way to get at Malmö, and I think Varberg actually identified it quite well. There was a controversial moment in this game. I mean, I think it should be a case study for referees. It was a really big decision. Matthews got foul. Well, I thought it was a foul. Referee booked him for diving. It was one of those ones, Steve, where you sort of get played clean through. You just beat the keeper to the ball, and then you touch it away from him, and you go down. For me, the keeper was late, and I thought it was a definite penalty when I first saw it. I couldn't believe he booked him. I really couldn't believe it for diving. When you watch it back, it's really hard, because when it's slowed down, you can start to make a case for maybe he made the most of it, but in full flow, I thought that was a definite penalty. That could have ended things for Malmö. I mean, they it was early in the game, but could have sort of summed up their day. Anyway, yeah, all in all, they've got a point, but they're just having a few too many of these sort of games, if you know what I mean, where you're not quite sure, they're not quite on it, and time's starting to run out. If you look at it, they've only won 1 of their last 3 games in the league, and they've had pretty easy games. They've had Malmö at home, lost that. They've had Östersunds away, which they won fairly comfortably, and they've had Varberg away. So it's not even as if they're tough games, but of course the big game this midweek will be against AIK at home, and that's maybe where they'll look to kind of reassert themselves, because that's going to be a huge game.
Yeah, just one other match I want to talk to you about from the previous round, and that was Mjällby 1, IFK Gothenburg 3. That's, like I said earlier in the show, the curse of the NFP interview, isn't it? We bigged up Mjällby's clean sheet run. Just needed 1 more to break some sort of record, didn't they? And it fell flat on its face. I watched a bit of this game, and there was an amazing save early on, actually, to keep the Mjällby clean sheet intact. I don't know how it didn't end up in a goal. I'm thinking, you know what, it's written in the stars that they're going to get this run going, but they end up conceding 3 goals, a red card as well. A valiant effort by Mjällby, but I mean, IFK played quite well in this game, didn't they?
Yeah, they were. It was a real shame. Obviously, you know, they came within, what was it? I think 15 minutes of the record in the end. So close. They needed to go one half of football, not conceding.
Oh man, that's so close
to beat the record, 20 plus year record of goals not conceded. You know, they've gone 8 clean sheets in a row. If you've not listened to the show, of course, go back and listen to it, because it was an incredible run and a really good chat with Anders in terms of how he's changed the team and what he's done. But yeah, they just needed a little bit more time. I mean, when the game started, I thought they're going to concede, because, you know, they had 40 minutes or so left for the record, and it was like EFK were carving them open, to be honest. They had 3 really good openings where I thought they're going to score here. I think Carl-Johan Eriksson made 2 really good saves, and then one of them, it was kind of like a break where I think it was 2-on-1, and they just played the wrong final ball type thing, and then he started to think, well, maybe it's going to happen. But no, the record went, and it was I think a poor way to give it up, really. Header from a corner, Carl Johansson with a brilliant header, you know, and Mjällby ended up just 16 minutes away from the record, so it was a real shame from that point of view. Of course, we've bought into this Mjällby run, haven't we, over the last 7 or 8 weeks, 6-7 weeks. Then they had a red card. My stream died at this point, so I didn't actually see the red card, but I know you said it was kind of the player was not very happy about it. All in all, and you know, ended a solid win for EFK. I thought EFK deserved it, to be honest. I thought they looked fairly decent, and it now takes them obviously 2 points above the relegation playoff. They're still not out of it, EFK, but just starting to show a little few signs of a fight.
I think anyone from 8th to 14th could actually end up in that playoff spot. There's only 5 points separating those teams. Yeah, Ostersund and Örebro are pretty much gone, but that playoff spot it could end up being anyone. I mean, to be fair, I think you would probably fancy anyone who finishes in this playoff spot to actually survive, but you still don't want to be in that match, do you? But I think IFK have played well recently. They've had 2 good wins in a row. They now have a midweek game against Djurgården at home. I mean, that's a really crunch game, isn't it? At the same time, Malmö facing AIK, and Elfsborg have a trip to Degerfors. And Degerfors are actually in good form as well. Although Elfsborg might look at that and think, you know, we've got the softer fixture here. On to this big game, mates. Malmö against AIK. 45 points for Malmö. And we've got AIK on 47. Now, Malmö, we mentioned, have had this problem in the Champions League recently affecting the games. Let's just have a brief update on what has been going on for them in the top tier of the European table, Jonathan. I mean, the results haven't been good, but I mean, have performances been okay?
No, they haven't really. It's been a bit of a controversy this week, to be honest. They got absolutely taken apart by Chelsea, and they got a lot of criticism, actually, Malmö. Now, of course, you know, they'd like to think of themselves as the biggest club in Sweden. You could probably argue they are at this point, definitely. Historically, you can debate that one all day, but you know, they're certainly the big team at the moment, and they got roundly criticised for the kind of just lack of any kind of effort really against Chelsea. It kind of there was a lot of reports just saying they kind of turned up and expected to lose, and you know, were more interested in sightseeing in London maybe than really getting involved in the match. And so there was a sense. I mean, I felt like it was a little bit harsh, because if you really look at it, Chelsea are just so many levels above Malmö. That's just the reality of it, really, isn't it? And I think you got to kind of bear that in mind. But I guess, you know, I saw one comment from someone saying, you know, why didn't they sort of, if you look at Östersund, for example, under Graham Potter, when they came to Arsenal and beat them. So people were saying, well, if Östersund can do that, why can't Malmö go to teams and at least put up some sort of fight? Because, you know, the game was over really pretty early. Even with Chelsea getting some injuries, Lukaku obviously going off injured and things like that. So Timo Werner got injured. The controversy came though in quite an interesting comment from so basically a journalist, Patrick Ekval, wrote a blog basically saying, you know, pretty much what I just said. You know, that Malmö didn't really believe in themselves. They sort of gave up before the game had started and that kind of thing. He wrote quite a critical piece. But what you don't normally see, Steve, is Malmö's sort of chief executive Nicholas Carnan, I think he's the chief executive. He's one of the directors anyway. He actually came out on Twitter and replied to the comment and said, "I rarely comment on journalists' opinion, Patrick, but this must be one of the dumbest things I've ever read." Now, you can imagine sort of. I'm trying to think of a director. I mean, you can imagine, I don't know, Roman Abramovich or sort of. I'm trying to, Ed Woodward coming out on Twitter and commenting after Man United get thrashed. That's pretty much the equivalent here, in that sense. I'm trying to think of other.
The Leeds chairman, Roderick Sarni, sometimes has been known to tweet some stuff in the heat of the moment, and fans just usually tell him to pipe down, keep his mouth shut.
Exactly. So, it didn't go down too well. I mean, Patrick Ekvall obviously was loving it. Being a journalist, he obviously he's got a big story there. So he kind of goaded a comment out from the manager and said, "No, I'm not going to take it back. That was my opinion." He said, "I've been praising Malmö for ages, and I've never heard you comment on anything before." So he kind of was basically making comments saying, "Why are you talking now when normally I'm quite praiseworthy?" So it did create a bit of a stir, but I think the general feeling was that Malmö are kind of just wobbling a little bit. I think that's the overriding feeling here. So that's the backdrop just going into this game. Now, when you look at it, this is a really big game because I think if Malmö win away to, if AIK win away to Malmö and open up a 5-point gap, I'm not saying the title race is over, but with 5 games to go, I think Malmö are going to just be in a bit of trouble. So I think Malmö do kind of have to get something from this game. I'm not saying they have to win it, but they can't lose, in my opinion, really. If you look at their last 5 games after that, they got Sirius away, EFK away, as I've said, is going to be a massive one. Hacken at home, Kalmar away, Halmstad at home. So this probably is the hardest game to come, but I still think they've got some tough games in that run-in, and then they've still got Juventus, Chelsea, and Zenit St. Petersburg to play as well. So you've got to factor that in. So it's a really, really big game for Malmö.
I think the problem here, the way I see it, if this was just 2 teams in the title decider, you could probably say, okay, we'll draw this game. It's not too bad. We'll be 2 points behind. The pressure's on them. We're the defending champions. What have you got? AIK. But, if Djurgården win, if Elfsborg win, there's other teams there to take advantage. So I don't know whether you need a different mentality. At the moment, the title race is not in their own hands. If Djurgården win their last 6 games, it's game over. Malmö can't win the title. Simple as that. So it's out of their hands in a way. Let's just talk about the tactical battle perhaps in this game. Malmö, AIK, the way I see it, you know more about these teams than me. I get a gist that this probably be quite a close, tight game. AIK have got a really strong defence. They've got the best defensive record in the league. They don't score that many goals, but I remember the year that they won the league. Different manager and everything, but they always, when they have a good year, it's so strong defensively. It seems they're going to come here and they themselves, probably a point wouldn't be a bad outcome for AIK, but did they themselves have to think about maybe winning it the way Djurgården are playing as well?
Yeah, tactically, I suppose if we start with the team news, a good bit of news for Malmö is that Oscar Lewicki is potentially, I think he's in the squad. Now he's missed quite a few games with injury. Key midfielder for them, the 29-year-old, and obviously Yondell Thomas has come out and said it's great that he's back. There was questions, will he be on the bench? And he said we'll see. Could be a surprise in the line. He said it's great that he's back, and obviously he's quite an important part of the team, to be honest. They do have some injuries though. Malmö, Jonas Knudsen, Felix Bejamo, and Ola Toivonen obviously still out, and Malik Abubakari is suspended. So, the team in that sense, I think tactically, I think the thing that plays into Malmö's hands is that I'm not quite convinced about AIK going forward and the pace that they have up front. I don't think they have a huge amount of that. Compared to other teams, for example, I really thought that, like I say, Varberg, the pacing behind of Matthews, I think that really troubled Malmö. And, they've got some aging kind of centre-backs. Moisander's obviously 36, I think it is. Brorson's, he's not that old, but he's kind of getting on a little bit. Arma Hodzic made some quality interventions in that game, by the way, against Varberg, to keep them in the game, 1v1, that kind of thing, defending. So yeah, Brawson's, he's like 25, so he's not 26. He's not really that young, but Moisander, as I say, is quite old, and I think there's a chance he'll probably start this game. Obviously, Martin Olsen as well, the left back, is an experienced player. He's in his 30s, so they're not the youngest sort of spring chickens. I don't think, Malmö, in that sense. But I think from AIK's point of view, yeah, that's just my question, really. I mean, they've got a fantastic win against Norrköping in their last game, 1-0. I think Norrköping are a good side. Stefanelli got the goal. Bahui's got some pace. El Bozzetti's got some pace, I guess. But I just wonder, they're not really a fast-breaking team, in my opinion. I think we could see the fullbacks maybe playing a role in this game. Lustig and maybe Otieno potentially. I expect Malmö to play in that 3-5-2 shape, and Berman, Savic, and Kolak probably up front. And I think that AIK maybe in a 4-4-2, maybe a 4-4-1-1 type thing. I think you may expect the fullbacks to kind of maybe try and challenge in behind and get some space in behind the wing backs of Malmö. So I think that's an area they could look at. I think it's an area they looked at against Norrköping to sort of get in behind them. But yeah, all in all, I mean, if you look at AIK's recent games, they've been very low scoring. The last 3 games have all been 1-0s. Lost 1-0 obviously against Hammarby, beat Djurgården 1-0, and then obviously beat Norrköping 1-0. So, they aren't conceding many, but the question is, can they rack up enough goals to sort of keep Malmö at bay? I'm expecting a cagey game. I don't expect it to be like full of goals. I think it will be maybe at best 2-0 or something like that to one of them, maybe 2-1. But I think the one thing that is going to interest me in this game, Steve, is will Kolak and Berman Savic step up? Because I think they have been a little bit off the pace in recent weeks, and I'm expecting them to, show their quality in a game like this.
Yeah, I'm just looking back at the head-to-head, and AIK do not have a good record at the stadium in terms of wins. The last time they actually won a competitive match here was way back in 2002 Swedish Cup. And according to the list I've been looking at, they don't actually have a league win at this stadium or wherever Malmö have played this century, which is incredible. Although one thing I will say is 6 of the last 8 head-to-heads in the league have all ended draws. So this is a really strong history of a draw in this fixture. It feels like the sort of match is going to be decided by sort of one moment of brilliance or maybe a mistake. It's going to be intriguing to me whether... AIK do not have a good away record this year. They're only 9th best away. They've been brilliant at home, but away they've not been as good. Malmö have dropped points at home though this year as well. So it's an intriguing little battle. I would be really interested, say with 10-15 minutes to go, if either side goes for the win. How much do you push for the win or do you take the draw? It's going to be a case. This match starts, by the way, at 6 p.m. UK time on Wednesday. So we've got this match on and the Bodø Glimt game. Molde on at the same time tomorrow. What a night for Scandinavian football.
I'm just going to read you some of the comments, Steve, from AIK camp before this match. Now, I know you're a fan of Football Manager. Are you a fan of the mind games when you're playing Football Manager?
No, the press conferences are bloody awful, repetitive and boring. If you're into that sort of thing, it's great for a bit, but then after 10 seasons or something, it gets very, very repetitive. Well,
anyway, the mind games have definitely been ramped up in the AIK camp. Let me just read you some of the comments from some of the players. Alexander Milosevic has said, it will be a disaster if Malmö does not win the Allsvenskan. He was asked why, and he said, if I really have to answer that, you're a bit stupid. Look how much money Malmö has, how much they spent on players and everything. If they do not win the Allsvenskan, it is clear they must be under huge pressure to do so. You think that's bad enough in terms of trying to ramp up the mind games. Then it's like a tag team event. Mikko Lustig comes in and says, it is clear the pressure is on Malmö. They are 3rd now. If they do not beat us, it starts to get a bit smelly for them. You've done fantastically well. They've done fantastically well to get to the Champions League with all their money and all their players. So it's clear all the pressure is on them. And then you think to yourself, the tag team, I'm trying to think of 2 tag team champions here, Hacksaw Jim Duggan and I don't know, Legion of Doom type thing. Seb Larsson comes in with the triple threat, and he says, all you've got to do is look at Malmö's squad. They're in the Champions League for a reason. They're the reigning champions. They have by far the best squad for a reason. With all due respect to what they've been doing lately, it's going to be a tough match for us, but they have a huge amount of pressure. So, The bottom line is here, Steve, they're really ramping up the pressure, aren't they? Okay, they're going into this as underdogs saying, well, we've got nothing to lose here. And I wonder if that will play a part. I do think in Swedish football sometimes I quite like these sort of mind games. You do get some interesting sort of things like this. I mean, just on a side note, Henrik Rydström, the Kalmar manager, I think you know that they do. I mean, for any listeners who aren't aware, they do joint press conferences post-match in Sweden. So basically, you've got two managers that they'll sit next to each other and literally talk about the game together. Now, in the after the Djurgården Kalmar game, Henrik Rydström interrupted the Djurgården manager Thomas Lagerlöf and started questioning him about his opinions on the game, saying, "Who are you talking about? Are you talking about Elfsborg or are you talking about Kalmar?" So, yeah, I mean that just gives you a bit of an idea in terms of there is a bit of needle sometimes in these games. Rydström came out and just basically ridiculed his colleague sitting right next to him. So, you can almost imagine in England, imagine Klopp and Solskjaer sitting next to each other and doing the press conference after that game. Do you know what I mean? And Rydström gave a little bit back to the Djurgården joint manager. So yeah, this is a theme that goes on a lot in Sweden, which I quite enjoy actually. And AIK are definitely trying to put pressure on Malmö here before this huge game.
We do have to ask you for a correct score prediction, Jonathan. I know this is a tough one, but Malmö are actually strong favourites with the bookmakers here. 1.70 shot. I mean, is that where your money would go? I mean, that looks a very short price to me in a potential title decider.
Well, I think Malmö will win the league, so I keep expecting them to sort of just run away with it. But they're like an engine where they're just stuttering. But you're expecting like a sort of Ferrari engine where you're just thinking, "Come on, get into gear." They have won 3 of the last 5 games. Don't get me wrong, but I still think that draws against the likes of Varberg, is not great. When they beat Örebro 5-1, you thought, right, they're going to run away with this now, and they'll be fine. But they are stuttering a bit, so I'm going to give you a prediction, but it's not going to be one I don't think you're going to like. I'm going to go 1-1 draw.
Yeah, I just think it all depends if the real Malmö shows up. But I've got a gut feeling that maybe AIK can get something here. It feels like it could be 0-0, maybe even as well. The way these teams go. With just one other match I really going to talk about before we finish the episode. We've got to talk about AFK Gothenburg, Djurgården, another really big game. Djurgården are the favourites in this match, but that's a difficult place to go, isn't it? I mean, what's the relationship like between these teams? We know that they have strong rivalry with Malmö, AK. Djurgården, is that sort of a big rivalry as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, just going back to the Malmö game just quickly. The only way I don't see it being 1-1 is if Malmö show up. If Kolak or Berman Savage show up, this is the sort of game where Malmö can prove themselves why they're the champions. And I just think this is the game for big players, isn't it? Really, this is one of those games. And maybe Peña might be an interesting player to look out for. By the way, Sergio Peña, he started to get a bit more involved in the team, and he's looked quite interesting in some of the games, so he could maybe have an influence. But IFK Djurgården is a massive game, of course. Two big teams. Djurgården, let's not forget they're top of the table on goal difference, so the advantage is kind of with them pretty much. IFK need points because that they're not going to go down automatically, but they're not out of the woods yet in terms of relegation playoff. And I watched Helsingborg Geist this evening, and that's looking like potentially Helsingborg or Trelleborg probably for that 3rd place. Gifssundsfall are doing really well at the moment. We'll talk about maybe the 2nd division in a future pod. But no, I think that it will be a massive game. IFK have already announced they've sold more than 11,000 tickets for this match. So, from a fan's point of view, it's going to be a decent atmosphere. May end up around the 13,000 maybe mark, maybe more. Who knows? But yeah, I think it will be a good atmosphere. Djurgården are a good side. But again, they've been stuttering a bit. This is what makes predicting this title race really difficult. They lost obviously at the derby at AIK, and then they lost at home to Elfsborg. Just about managed to sort of scrape the win against Kalmar. Looked really good first half, raced into a 3-0 lead, and then Kalmar came back. I mentioned Henrik Rydström there. He's just signed a new contract, by the way, so congratulations to him. He didn't agree with at all with what Djurgården was saying about it. He thought they deserved more from the game, Kalmar. So it'll be an interesting one. IFK have just started to show signs of maybe looking all right at the moment. So it's going to be a very tight game. I think that one. They've won back-to-back games now, but they've had sort of maybe Örebro have been really poor this season and sort of brushed them aside. Mjällby I was a little bit surprised that they got a fairly comfortable win there. So yeah, it's a tough game to call, that one.
Djurgården have only kept one clean sheet in the last 8 games, and that was against Östersund, which, I mean, does that really count? It does, but it doesn't, if you know what I mean. Defence is obviously letting them down a bit. I think the fans are a big part in this game. I mean, even in that match against Mjällby, they took a huge number of fans with them. It's like they took over the ground. And, this is going to be a difficult atmosphere for Djurgården. Let's see what they're made of mentally. Great opportunity for them, though, with that, AIK against Malmö match unfolding. Come the end of the round, Elfsborg could be leading the championship. Quite realistically, it could happen. So let's see. Lots to look forward to this midweek round in both Eliteserien and Allsvenskan. It's going to be really tasty, Jonathan. I guess bring on the games.
Yeah, Elfsborg travel the next day to Degerfors. That's a big game. Obviously, we can't ignore that in the context of the race. You probably expect Elfsborg to win, but they've got to come up against Victor Edvardsen, who's absolutely flying at the moment. So some really big games. And obviously, just before we end the show, on a footnote, if you look at the bottom of the table, Steve, I think I'm right in saying if Degerfors or Mjällby win the next game, then both Örebro and Östersund are down. So pretty sure I'm right in saying that. Yeah,
I mean, they're both. It doesn't look good with Halmstad's win. It looks like they're in massive trouble. They're 10 points.
They're both gone. They're both gone. I mean, they're not coming back from that. They're 10 points off it with 6 games to go. They're not coming back. But I think they could actually be relegated this round if Mjällby win and Örebro and Östersund fail to win. So,
right.
That would open up the gate. That would open it up to 11 points at the moment. 14.
I think Östersund can officially go down. I don't think Örebro can officially go until round number 26.
Yeah, that's right. But I mean, if Malmö get a win and Örebro lose, they've got 1 point. They're going to be hanging on by the skin of their teeth. So we could officially lose Östersund at the end of this next round, and they've got a tough game at home to Häcken. So let's see how that goes.
Yeah, and Häcken need the win just to make sure they don't get sucked into this battle for 14th. Which if Halmstad keep winning, Malmö keep winning, it might be you need 34, 35 points to be absolutely sure of survival. A higher than normal number to avoid that relegation playoff spot. So lots to look forward to. Like I said, I think that's probably it for this episode, isn't it? Do tune into the matches in midweek. There's no. I think there's some other big leagues across Europe having some certain matches, but mostly cup rounds, isn't it? So it's a good chance maybe to if you want to watch a bit of top flight action in the Scandinavian leagues at the business end of the season, do tune in.
Yeah, you can follow us on Twitter at Nordic Footpod. Follow me on Twitter at JFFootball, FUTBOL. Drop us a comment if you enjoyed the recent episodes, recent interviews. We had a lot of interviews in this last sort of 4 or 5 weeks. Tom Dent, don't forget. If you've not listened to him on mental health and management, that was a really interesting one. We had Football in DK, Henry. He obviously came on and spoke about the Danish Super League, which has been interesting of late. And, of course, Anders Torstensen. So dig into the archives. And you can also catch us on Patreon, patreon.com/Nordic Football Podcast if you'd like to sort of back the show, with a little bit of a bonus podcast here and there. So I think that'll be it, really, won't it, Steve? I'm done, really.
Yeah, that's it for this episode. Thanks very much for listening. Do take care. Stay safe. And we'll see you again next time. But for now, it's goodbye from me.
And from me as well, goodbye, everyone. Take care. Stay safe.